is a topic that I want to talk to you about that's truly a wealth building strategy, right? It's truly another tool from the toolbox that you can use that allow you to ultimately grow your wealth in real estate. Not a lot of people talk about it. Some people are, and a lot of people are leaving it behind the doors. I don't know why. And I've mentioned it in multiple videos, and I assume that I made a video for you guys explaining exactly this, but I haven't. So stick with me. I'm gonna tell you exactly what we're talking about. Hey, if you're new here, my name is Jordan Aubrey. This is the Real Estate Investing Done Right YouTube channel, where we talk about all things real estate investing, market analysis, finances, credit, anything that you can possibly think of that can make your life a little bit easier. I want to address that right now in these videos or over this in this platform, this YouTube channel. But obviously, if you're interested in some of that content, make sure you hit the subscribe button, cut on the notification bell. That way you get these gems whenever we drop it. And like everything else, make sure you hit that like button because it does great things for the YouTube algorithm. Obviously, if you read the thumbnail, you already know what I'm talking about. It's subject to financing, right? It's subject to financing, a strategy that I've truly used to build over $1 million worth of net worth as far as rental properties, owner finance notes, all these good things, buying homes, but essentially be able to do the next deal. It works wonders for a lot of people. And that's what allows me to be dangerous. But I want to teach you guys this because I ultimately believe this particular strategy will pick up in 2021, or if there's a potential correction. I'm not gonna say crash, right? That's clickbait. But I think if there's a potential correction coming up, I think ultimately we're gonna see exactly where you can use this method, still be able to close deals, still be able to make money, and you be the bank ultimately, right? Any place that got marble floors and vaulted ceilings, that's something you want to model your business after. So essentially, you'll be able to be the bank, do some owner finance, some wraps, some lease options, whatever the case may be. But essentially, you want to be dangerous. You want to have multiple tools in the toolbox that you can go to that allow you to close the next deal. And let's jump right into it. So we're jumping into talking about subject to financing, right? I put it up here. Subject to is not necessarily the go-to option when it comes down to making offers in real estate, right? It's another tool that we have in the toolbox and we pull it out accordingly, right? When you have a Phillips screwdriver, you do not take out a flathead screwdriver if you have a Phillips screw, right? You go out and you pull out the Phillips screwdriver. Exact same analogy here. You use this when you're supposed to use it. So not every deal requires a subject to financing. So this is when we pull it out, right? These are typically the people that it solves a problem for. So typically, say we're knocking a door and we're talking to a seller that was up for pre-foreclosure, right? And that particular seller had an ARV of around $150,000, right? House wasn't in bad shape, but it had an ARV of $150,000. In this particular instance, the house was worth $110, right? It was, not worth, but they owed $110 on this particular house, right? So to make it an 80-cent deal, we'd have had to get it at $120. But obviously, majority of the investors, depending on the area, right? It could be a secondary market, it could be a primary market, but initially your cash offer is going to be around 70% minus repairs, right? So in this particular case, for this particular seller, right, 70% of 150 by itself is 105, right? And if I got that math wrong, I don't think so. I just multiplied that by 3, which is 30%, and came up with 105. So I'm assuming that's right. 45 minus 150. I'm assuming that's right. But anyways, the 70% minus repairs, right? We got to be at 105. In this case, they owe 110, right? And they may be behind 12 grand on that particular property, right? So in this particular case, where they typically had a little bit of equity when you pulled the list, by the time you made it there, since they're at foreclosure and they're 5, 6, 7 months behind, or some people may be 10 months behind, 12 months behind now at this particular point, since they're at that phase, how do we still close on this particular property? This is how we do it. We do subject to existing financing, right? So the way we would draw up the contract is if it didn't need a lot of repairs, say it needed $5K in repairs, what I would do in this instant, I will come in and I will mention, hey, how about we take over your payments, right? Because if I give them the 105 offer, I'll be honest with you, the seller is going to look at me and say, you know what, thank you, you've been a lot of help, but I just can't accept your offer. And if you don't ask the right probing questions, 9 times out of 10, you will never even know that they owe more, right? So there's options to this. You got to play the game the way it's meant to be played. And if you're a good investor and you understand these things, obviously you can take advantage of the situation. So ask the right questions, build that rapport with the seller, open up with them. And typically I always ask, there's a mortgage we got to pay on it. Do you know about how much you owe, right? In a foreclosure situation, this is very, very tough times. I want to get all the numbers that I need to make the offer. That way you can make an educated decision on what you'll walk away with. And then obviously it's not going to change in my effect as far as what I'll be able to buy for. But essentially, if we know that number now I can do right by you, make sure you get a certain number that you was looking for to walk away with, to give you a fresh start in this whole process, right? That's typically the conversation that we have between the seller, the dialogue that we have. But essentially, the way we'll buy this particular property, instead of buying it at 70% minus repairs like most other people would, what we would do is we would come in and we would pay this $12,000 reinstatement fee. So it'll go just like this. The reinstatement, we will pay the reinstatement, for the seller after we close, of course. So let me put it in a way that'll make it easy for you guys. Put it on the contract, like always. And just because you put it on the contract don't mean you have to take it down. You can wholesale anything. You can wholesale on terms. It doesn't matter. You can wholesale anything. So obviously, number one, always in real estate, is put it on the contract. Number two, order reinstatement. Order reinstatement and payoff. Depending on which title company you want, they're going to want to pay off for it. Number three, close on the property. And in this particular instance, there's not a lot of money to give the seller, right? So in this instance, since we're buying it at 110, essentially because that's what they owe, and that's their payoff, and the reinstatement is 12. What we'll do is we'll close on the property, and if for instance, we give them plus 3K, right? We'll give the seller 3K at closing, right? Just to get them some money in their pocket so they can move, or they can have first and last month's rent. Maybe they already have the moving money because they haven't paid mortgage in 6 months. But they haven't done right with their money up until this point. We'll give them $3,000 to get out of the house and move and all that good stuff. Basically cash for keys. And number four, what we go is we reinstate the mortgage. Now there's processes to it. You always reinstate. You never spend your money until you own the property. That's why I say close, right? And in this closing process, what's going to happen is they're going to deed the property to my entity. Right? That's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to deed the property into my entity, my name, however you want to say it. And essentially, that's when you go and reinstate. You never want to pull money out of pocket for something you're not necessarily going to own. Right? So I would never advise anybody to do this type of transaction without first closing on the property. Never do that, because if I was to pay $12,000 to reinstate the mortgage, all I did was gift them $12,000 to reinstate it, right? But I can always come in, deed it over to myself, then reinstate it. Now the property is mine. Now I can foreclose on the seller if they won't get out. I can evict the seller if they won't get out, right? And typically, if I have it on terms, I'm gonna have something in the lingo as far as agreement that allows me to evict that particular tenant, and they know I gave them money to move, so I have all rights to evict, even right now during COVID and the pandemic. So that's what you want to look at. You want to get a contract, regardless what it's for, right? You're going to ask that lingo, you're going to talk to them and figure out exactly what you can buy it for. Then once you buy that particular property, once you get it under contract, right, and agree on numbers, you have to come up higher than 70%, maybe 80% minus repairs. That will be 80% if it needed 10,000 in repairs, right? That's essentially buying it at 80% minus repairs. But you'll get it under contract. You agree to terms, get it under contract. You order reinstatement and payoff, because those are figures you need to know if you're going to own a property. And then at that particular point, you're going to close on the property, deed it over to the entity, and then you're going to reinstate the loan, right? That's subject to financing. So we've done that to create so much wealth. And a lot of people think, like, why would they take it? To be honest with you, most sellers take this because this is their least worst option. It's not their best option. I'll be honest with you, it's not their best option. Their best option is to sell the property, right? But in this case, this is their least worst option, meaning they don't really have anything else to do. What else would they take? A foreclosure? Going to last 7 years on their credit, right? That's not going to be a good stepping stone. You're still going to need first and last month down payment. Where are you going to get that money from, right? So it's not really the best option for them, but it's their least worst option. Now, let me exactly tell you how subject to work. So if you're liking the content, always make sure you hit the like button. So let's talk about this one moving forward, right? We talk about when do we use subject to financing. Now, that's very important. What's another thing that's important is you actually understanding subject to financing. So let me break down exactly what that is. Subject to financing is essentially you taking over the payments for that particular home. That's all it is, subject to the existing financing. That's what the term is for. So we say sub to, that's just a short term for subject to the existing financing, meaning we're not going to the bank, we're not qualifying for the loan, we're not going and bringing any private money to the table, not to actually pay off the house. This will in affect the seller's credit 100%. I want you to be honest with them. This will affect the seller's credit. Now, in what way will it affect it? Well, once I reinstate the mortgage, it's going to affect it in a positive way because that old account is now positive, right? And after 2 years of those old payments being in the past and I made consecutive payments, it's going to put them in a great position, right? So essentially, you're going to inherit any problem that that property has. So P.I., T.I., you pity? That's on you. The buyer is responsible for that. And that is, and if you don't know, that's principal, interest. I don't even know why I'm putting this like this. That's taxes. Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Right? So pity on the buyer. Taxes on the buyer. Insurance on the buyer. Interest on the buyer. Right? Who else? What else do we have in there? Maintenance. Buyer. What else do we have when we're buying a house? What else do we have when we buy a house? You got credit on the seller. Their credit is still on the line, right? Can they go buy another FHA? If this is an FHA mortgage, can they buy another one? No, they can't. Right? The seller's credit is on the line. So right here, credit goes to the seller. Maintenance goes to the buyer. Interest payment goes to the buyer. Cash flow. Right? Meaning if we was to put somebody in that property, who gets paid? Depends on how you structure the deal. You could structure it to where you're still paying the seller. We don't structure it that way though, right? Why would anybody structure it that way? That goes to the buyer. Right? Down payment. Say if we're doing I love this stuff for this particular reason. Say if we're doing an owner finance, right? Down payment. What does that money go to? Say for instance, that same scenario that we bought the house ARV is $150, right? in this particular case, it needed 10 grand, right? The fees that was associated with this property, we bought it for 110. We assumed the loan, the reinstatement was for 112. Not assuming a loan, I'm sorry, that's bad terminology. We bought the house subject to financing. Assuming a loan, meaning we actually brought tax returns, documents, and actually put that house on our credit. That's not the case. We did not do that. We are buying the house subject to existing financing. So we were 12 grand out of pocket. We gave the seller 3 grand plus was our closing costs. I just put 2K. So all our money out of pocket we spent on this particular deal. We spent 17K, right? It only needed $10,000 in work. So for $10,000 in work, I'll be honest, I like to season my properties for owner finance. What I typically do, I wouldn't go in and put $10,000 in that particular property. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to do a deep clean for $300. For $300. Obviously, any big ticket items, say HVAC or roof is leaking. I want to address those big ticket items, right? That way the house is at least livable. But as far as cosmetics, man, I don't care. I'm giving unloanable people loans, right? That's what owner finance is for. Typically when people take on owner finance because they can't qualify the bank, right? Not saying they're bad people, they just can't qualify. Some people work 1099, some people, business owners, don't claim a dime on their tax return. Whatever the case may be, these people buy owner finance, right? So in this instance, I'm gonna do a deep clean, make it livable, because I know in my instance, when I went going to paint a house on owner finance, the first thing they come in and do, and they paint little Jimmy's room blue. They paint little Ann's room pink, right? And the mom and dad, they start doing everything to the house, right? Making it better and making it theirs. So I don't want to go in there and do cosmetic updates on something where I know I'm already out 17.5, right? Or 17.3 with the deep clean, the reinstatement right here, the 2 grand for closing, and then 3K to seller, right? Those are all the fees associated with it. So in this instance, 17.3, whenever we do an owner finance down payment, it's ARV 150. Typically we sell it for a premium. So in that case, we'll sell the property for 160, 10 grand over. Why not, right? It's our property with no bank appraisals, nothing, right? Just inspection if that's on the seller, if they want to do it, but they don't necessarily have to. But since we're giving a loan, we're raising the price up on the seller. On the buyer, and then we're going to take 10% down, which in a metropolitan area is not going to be a hard thing. So we're going to take 16K down. Who get that down payment? Buyer. Do the buyer get that down payment or the seller? Right? We just went over it. The buyer get that down payment. So essentially, the property that they were in 17.3, I just got a down payment for 16 grand. And this particular seller paid closing costs, right? So now that's 16 grand, I get to cut a check for 16,000. So now essentially I'm all in the deal for $1,300. I'm all in the deal at $1,300. The mortgage was $900 a month. Their particular payment is going to be $14 a month, right? That's almost 10% interest, right? This is great for secondary markets because the ARV is so low. It's great for those particular markets. The mortgage is cheap. Now they pay $1,400 a month, and I no longer have to. And now once I sell it, is maintenance on me? No. Maintenance on the other buyer. It's not on me anymore. I sold the particular property. I'm in it for $1,300, cash flowing $500 a month for the next 30 years on this particular mortgage. That's why I love subject to financing. Now, the knock on it is that if you don't do this method the right way, right? We just came out of pocket 17 G's to get this deal. Right? If you don't do this deal the right way, you're going to end up like me initially when I first started off. Was doing a ton of deals, was taking those wholesales, was buying another property, was buying other properties. And essentially what we did is we focused on acquiring so many assets that we ended up real estate rich and real life poor. That's not a place you want to be. So as often as you possibly can, if it's a big subject to, if it's a big market that you got to go in there and reinstate the mortgage or whatever the case may be, if it's a big number, in that case, you want to make sure that you're doing just as much acquisition, wholesaling, fixing and flipping, so you never run into that issue of being real life poor and real estate rich, right? That's an issue that I think not enough people talk about, but it's a common theme in real life scenarios. 9 times out of 10, majority of the investors want to be real life poor, real estate rich. Why is that? Because they mismanage their cash flow. That's why acquisition is always the most important part of the business. That's why marketing is always the most important part of the business, because essentially you want to make sure you always got cash flow coming in. So that's very, very important. But essentially ARV 150, you're all in at 17K. You can turn around and owner finance. This was an owner finance structure. This was an exit right here as far as the owner finance. This was an acquisition as far as what we got it for. But this is the big deal. Subject to, we're going to be responsible for the payment. We're going to be responsible for the maintenance. We're going to be responsible for the cash flow. We're going to be responsible for the down payment. Now, who's on the line as far as credit and loan? The seller, right? They're on the credit. They're on the hook for credit and loan, because I'm not paying off the loan, and I don't anticipate paying off the loan until the house is either sold outright from me, right? Meaning, so I put it on the MLS and somebody buy it outright, or 30 years go by and we pay it off, right? And I'm not anticipating taking it off their credit either. We're not going to anticipate that. Now, if you want to look at some other people, JDI Financials, I mentioned them in another, the 100% finance video, but it's an opportunity where you can go talk to him. He can possibly get that mortgage off the homeowner's credit. But outside of that, I'm responsible for everything except for credit and loan. And if I don't need a loan, if I don't need credit, how many of these can I do? A ton of them. The best part about it, you can use OPM. You can use OPM, other people's money. You can use OPM for this particular property as well, right? So it's a great way to acquire rentals. We've acquired a ton of them, still own some today. I bought my mom a house using this exact same strategy, right? So you can buy your personal homestead. You can go do whatever you want to do using the subject to strategy. And I think it works wonders for a lot of people. So definitely make sure you take advantage of it. And this particular strategy, when people start foreclosing on homes, 2020, 21, this strategy is going to be used a ton, because there's going to be a supply and demand. A lot of people are going to be interested in selling their house right out of the forbearance because they have no other options. What's the best thing to do? Go in, reinstate it, do an owner finance, make $500-600 a month, whatever the case may be, and be able to pay a premium for those particular properties. Hey, so with that being said, if you have any questions concerning the subject to, please reach out to me. That way I can explain exactly what I'm talking about. Obviously, there's a lot going on this particular board, and the other board, I've already raised another board. So it's a lot of topics that we can talk about on subject to financing, but this is just one of them that I wanted to talk to you guys about. So if you have any comments, please drop them below. Let me know where you're from. If you want recommendations, or if you want to help me out make my next video, have questions about something in real estate, definitely drop another comment down below. Let me know exactly what question you are. I know we featured a couple of people on that particular video on videos before, and always remember, keep winning. Let's go.